Hi, I'm Dave. Welcome to Tuner's Workshop. This is the first video in a four-part series on plating. We're going to focus on setting up a plating station, and then we're going to try out some different kinds of plating solution, and we're going to have a little shootout to see what works best. Thanks for watching. Our first project is going to be a plating bench. There's a lot of videos out there on how to do plating. There's a lot of videos on how to do different kinds of homemade solutions. So we're not going to go over all that kind of stuff. Although in a later video, we're going to do a shootout between homemade solutions, some Eastwood, some Caswell, and also a plating solution that's laid out by a chemist that's readily available, easy to make, and it's not a vinegar-based solution. So we'll do that sometime later. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at how to build a plating station. The whole idea behind this plating station is that everything's in one area. When you're ready to plate something, your parts are prepped, you can bring them to your plating bench, you can power it up. It takes about 20 minutes for all the chemicals to come up to temperature. You'll notice that there's some active PIDs. One of the things that I don't like is cluttered work areas. So you'll notice that there's no wires showing. When we actually get to plating, you'll see that a couple of wires come up the very back for the plating solution itself. But all the heaters are integral into the buckets, and we're going to look at heaters that go inside the buckets. We're also going to go through how to make the buckets with the heaters built in. And it's pretty simple, but it's pretty cool. Works out really well. So the idea behind this particular plating bench is you can plate anything. If you want to plate, right now we're set up to plate zinc. You can plate tin, you can plate chromium, you can plate any number of different things. The process is essentially the same, but one of the other things we do on this bench is we do anodizing. So just by simply pulling the buckets out, reconfiguring the PIDs for the right temperature for the different chemicals, I can do anodizing all the way from cleaning the part through the anodizing and into the various colors that we want to use on the same bench. And you can see that everything's in a bucket. The buckets are all sealed so that if they stay here, they're all sealed. You don't lose any chemicals, no spills. But if you want to swap them out, you simply lift the bucket out, unplug any of the heaters that happen to be hooked up to the PIDs, and then you're going to be able to drop in a new bucket, plug in, set the temperature on the PIDs, and move right along. So it's a very reconfigurable right here. You'll see that the shelves have a lot of different things on them. My distilled water's down there in the bottom left-hand corner. I do have some white vinegar. Again, this isn't going to be a video about making plating solutions, but vinegar is a good cleaning agent. You can see my spray bottles are there with distilled water as well as detergent and water. You can see on the bottom right hand corner is my ultrasonic cleaner. I use that on a lot of occasions. My gram scale is there, my spare chemicals are there, my power supply is there. And on the top shelf on the left hand side, you'll see, well, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but you'll see my personal protective equipment. PPE is something that's very important if you're going to do this safely. That term PPE has become a buzzword quite a bit because of COVID. So a lot of people think of PPE as face shields and masks, and that's a little bit of it, but we'll talk about some of the PPE that you need to use as we go along the way here. But this video, we're really going to get down and we're going to focus on how to build a bench. All right, so let's talk about our plating bench. This is a pretty simple cabinet, but this one is a pretty cool cabinet. I gotta send a big shout out to my friend Jerry Moody at Gallery West. Guy builds the finest cabinets you will ever use in your life or see. I've been doing a little bit of motorcycle restoration for him, and he stepped in and built this really awesome cabinet for me, and it's just perfect. all kinds of little extras on it. You can see the aluminum on it. You can see the nice finished material. One of the things that you're going to have to deal with whenever you're working around this type of stuff is you will spill things. Some of it will be water, some of it will be soap, but some of it will be alkali solutions that are very caustic. Occasionally you'll have some acid solutions that you'll spill. So when you're picking out what materials you want to use for your bench, you want to keep those kind of things in mind. If you use the right materials, everything's going to stay up on top. It wipes down pretty easy, and you're not going to have much issues down below. This particular bench is on wheels. That's part of the plan because I want to be able to roll this out. I want to be able to use it. And eventually, I think I'm probably going to build a false top for it that actually sits over the top of the buckets, and so that I can use it for workspace as well. But what I've learned around the shop is if it's an empty horizontal surface, it'll get stacked up full of stuff. So maybe I won't do that. We'll have to see in the future. Anyway, so this cabinet, it's on casters, as you can see. It's laid out to take 7 buckets, 4 in the front, 3 in the back. I do use 2.5 gallon buckets. 2.5 gallon buckets is perfect for what I need to do. I can do anything from a nut and bolt or a bracket off a motorcycle, chain adjusters. I can do motorcycle axles. Although those are just about the limit of what I can do. But I can also do something really long as an axle and a separate bucket just for the plating activity. And the rest of it all works out pretty good. You can do exactly the same thing with 5-gallon buckets if you want to. But I can do a 4-barrel automotive carburetor in 2.5 gallons, so it really reduces the amount of space you need as well as the amount of chemicals you need. However, if you're doing bigger parts and longer parts, there's plenty of room. The bench doesn't have to be much bigger for to get 5-gallon or even 6-gallon buckets in there. They're not that much bigger around. They're just a lot deeper. So 2.5 gallons, the way all my stuff's set up right now. I do keep an extra 5-gallon bucket full of clean water because, clean water, sometimes you need to rinse something in a hurry or something's not going right. So it's always good to have clean water around, as well as it's a good safety thing if you splash something, and you need to rinse off your hands or something like that. And again, we'll talk about safety, in one of the other videos. But extra bucket of clean water is nice to have around. So for this particular cabinet, we decided to build the countertop out of Corian. Corian is a readily available countertop material that they use in kitchens and bathrooms. It is a plastic material. It's a really, really good material for things like this because it's very resistant to alkalis, acids. Water doesn't bother it even if it stays on for long periods of time. It is a solid surface, so that if you scratch it or you damage it, you get any paint on it, you can simply sand it out real quickly if you want, or if it just gets generally dirty, it cleans up really well with things like Scotch-Brite. This particular Corian material is about a 1/2 inch thick. You can kind of see that it's nice and solid. It is glued down to the top of the cabinet, so it attaches very easy. In addition, the Corian has been laminated with 2 thicknesses around the outside edge here, just a small thin piece. That helps provide some extra thickness on the edge so that it doesn't flex. It gives us an opportunity to sand a nice round corner into here, nice smooth corners here so that it's not sharp anywhere, and it's a very nice surface to work with. Similar materials are available on the market under different brand names. Anyway, so this particular bench, as you can see, it's built out of plywood with white melamine on the surface to give it a really nice clean finish. You can go to any of your big box stores, Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards, any of those kind of things, and you'll find the availability to buy it made to size. If you like, you can buy just raw sheets and make it yourself. It's none of the temperatures that you're going to work with, even with anodizing where you're boiling the sealing solution to over 200 degrees, none of that will even bother the Corian at all. There are more companies that make identical materials. Silestone is another company that builds a very similar material that works really, really well. One of the other things you can do if you want to do something very simple and quite often can be much less expensive is if you go to a cabinet shop or maybe a box store. They sell countertop material for your home in links, that's pre-made. And quite often you can find something at the Home Depot or the Lowe's or something like that that's been scratched or damaged in some way. There's a chip in the corner or something like that. And it's not good enough to use in somebody's kitchen remodel, but it's perfect for you to use out in the shop, and they'll sell them really, really cheap. And they work great for that. The only drawback to those is it's generally some type of a Formica type material, plastic laminate material that's been put on top of a particle board or an MDF, medium density fiber board. And in those cases, if you're going to use those, once you get your holes in, you're going to want to seal it up really, really well with like a good sealer and probably a good epoxy paint, because once the moisture gets down in there, it'll soak up into those materials pretty quickly. And again, you're using these alkali and acid materials that soak in pretty quick. So that's the end of part 1. In part 2, we're going to look at the PIDs, see how they're put together. We're going to do a couple of buckets and put some heating elements in them, show you a couple different ways to do that. And then we're going to plug everything in and get it all turned on. So stay tuned. Thanks.